Thanks for joining us today, guys. Today we're joined by Malcolm Teasedale. He's got a fascinating story, loads of travel in his story, and excited for him to share a bit about that with us today. Malcolm, you want to start off by just introducing yourself a little bit to the audience?
Hello there. Thanks, Liam, for inviting me onto your program. Glad to be here. My name is Malcolm Teasedale. I'm originally from Coventry, England. Lived approximately 1/3 of my life there. Lived most of my life over here in the United States. I've lived in Canada and also Singapore, but I've lived most of my life in the United States. My parents were World War II veterans from Coventry, and after the war finished, they had the two children, myself and my sister. My sister still lives there, but I've been living in the States for a long time now. 30 plus years. I'm in Florida, Northwest Florida on the Panhandle, but I've also lived in Boca Raton, Atlanta, and the great city of Milwaukee, which is where I'll be this upcoming weekend, by the way. So that's a little about me, where I came from, and you can tell from my Alabama accent that I sort of live in that area of Florida right now. Yeah.
Very cool. A great city of Milwaukee. I can't remember the last time I heard it described that way.
Well, my son lives up there, so I'm going to see him for a few days. That's it. We'll go and play around at golf. It's a bit cooler up there than it is here, so it should be fun. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, on our podcast here, The Prosperity Perspective, we love to kind of understand investment decisions that you've made along the course of your career, right? And so kind of going back to that first point where you made a lot of money, you weren't worried about taking care of, basic needs and necessities. What did you start doing with the money? Did you immediately go and travel, which I know is a passion for you today? Did you invest in the fancy sports car? Did you invest it? Kind of what was your framework in terms of how you invested then? And then kind of fast forwarding to now, right? Or you've got a couple companies that, you led and co-founded. As you kind of progressed through your career, how did that change? And then looking back, would you do anything different?
I think that I probably would. Yeah. If you speak to anyone, they're probably, if they say to you, "No, I wouldn't have done a darn thing differently," I don't think they're being truthful. I probably would. We learn along the way, and you learn because you haven't done things right in the first place, and it's all part of that. Learn, do better next time. So, all in all, I just have to be thankful for the way it went, and it was hard work. And we had a lot of employees, by the way, but the aim was to take care of them as well. But all in all, it turned out well in the end. And basically in 2013 is the year I took early retirement, because we had interest from larger companies to acquire our intellectual property and our staff, actually. And so it was time to bail. And my partner was actually a bit more keen than I was. I get it. He was a little bit older than me. He'd had enough. And so, well, okay, yeah, let's do it. So that was it, really.
Interesting. So if we rewind further, right, it sounds like that was the last exit for you, set you up for retirement. If we rewind further to where you kind of first experienced wealth, kind of, what position were you in? What did that look like? And what was your framework in terms of where you invested your money?
Yeah, it's funny because it's difficult. It's a difficult term to define when you say wealth. What does that really mean? Does it mean dollars? Basically, I had a good job, actually. I must admit, for working for a technology company. I managed their technical support department from Florida. But it was back in those days where we thought, myself and my business partner, friend at the time, and we found ourselves on a job site together, and we started talking, and we thought about we could develop a product that was a bit better than what our existing company had at the time. It wasn't the top of their list. They were doing lots of other stuff that was a bit more important, so they weren't going to move funds into development of what we saw was physically, well, it was a small product, but we saw the importance of it. So we decided, it's an opportunity. Let's see if we can investigate it more, because we thought it was going to be an important product to the marketplace. And that's when we got together and started doing it. So initially, we bailed out. We got some people to join us, and we started developing. There was no idea of making money at that time, because this was just a thought of, well, if we don't start our own business now, we never will, right? It's that thought in our heads. And because I didn't want to have any regrets later on in life. But it started to do well, and we got traction. And then, I would say, yes, we started to earn a bit more money than we would have done had we stayed with our existing company. All right. So common sense prevailed. We thought we knew what we were doing. We managed to grow the company in so much that we were able to bring on more employees to soak up the workload, and we expanded throughout North America. And I suppose, looking back, we did quite well, and then we got our own office and all that stuff. And then, but the main thing is really that took us to a different level, was expanding into international markets. A lot of companies don't think about that, but for us, it seemed like a logical step, because we felt we had a product that would fit well into international markets, where we could find business partners, technology partners overseas, and they could sell our product and make money from it as well. So, and that seemed to work also. So over the years, space of 15 years, we actually grew the company, and we had presence in 80 countries in the end, and we had about 150 employees. But during that, it wasn't, when you talk about wealth or money, whatever that means, it didn't happen instantaneously. It just gradual. It was a gradual process. We tended to do better and better and better, which meant more money in our pockets. But we also gave the employees a piece of the company as well. So they were doing well. They had an incentive to stay and work hard for us. So it was a great team effort all around. It wasn't just the two of us. We had good employees, and it was a good team effort. And that was pretty much it. And, then in later years, or last 2 or 3 years, we obviously became a target for an acquisition because of our intellectual property. And then ultimately, of course, it happened. So that's pretty much it. Early retirement happened, So
what was the product that you guys were that you created and were selling?
it was product to provide management information in environments where, if you're not sure what a contact center is, you've probably heard that term now, but it was where, for example, if you made a phone call into an airline company to book a flight, right? Your call is going to go into queue and wait to get answered, all right? And on top of that, there's more to it than that. It's workforce management, which tells the supervisor how to staff during times of the day, but it shows service you're providing to customers. They need that big time right now, because everyone's bogged down with service. So it was that type of environment. But virtually every business in the world can justify having what we call a call center, even if it's 5 or 6 staff to thousands, to handle call volume communications with the outside world. Why? Well, to get business and provide great service. And that's where it came about. All right. And even though we went through an economic downturn in 2007, 2008, if you remember that, it didn't affect us, because we had a great story to tell. Because that, when we said, you know what, you cannot afford not to buy our product, because what's prime now is providing great service in this economic downturn. And those were good years for us as well. So that was our story. We always had a story to tell why people should buy our product, and it worked. And that was pretty much it. We kept it going. But the international market, we translated our software into 7 different languages, so we could enter these markets. And that was the investment we made along the way. The common sense decisions, we think we were good at. It doesn't matter. I'm an engineer by trade, and so is my partner. But you can have degrees of the yin yang, but the common sense is a big thing that set us through. Until the time of selling the company.
Got it. So, as you were talking about, you're making a little bit more every year, and the money continued to increase. Um, was there a point that you stopped and looked and said, hey, I've got more money now. I should be trying to determine what I should be doing with it, other than, it sounds like, obviously buy the house, take care of the family,
Yeah.
the basics, that, the American dream, right? So you achieve the American dream, check, right? What came next?
Well, yeah, along the way, because uh, I obviously bought a house, and I bought another place. Yeah, I got a fancy sports car. Yeah, yeah. You have the toys along the way. I was able to do that, and my partner had a plane. Because he was a bush pilot and way back when, so he bought himself a little plane. Okay, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But we didn't do it to a ridiculous standpoint. You know, common sense. When we say invest money, we still do it today. I use financial advisors like many other people do, and so yeah, I'm pretty well set. I'm not reckless, but I've always been. I won't say a cheapskate like my father was, but there's a reason for that. I just want to. I'm what's the word? Frugal, if you wish. I'm not reckless, but I recognize that we're comfortable. Yes.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the, you bought a place, another place, sports car, but you also were expanding into international markets, right? And you
Yeah.
said for you, it's common sense, right? So obviously there's a plan that you had into, no, this makes sense. I need to do that first
Yeah.
because it will propel X, Y, Z, right? So kind of how did you set up that decision-making framework in your mind in terms of, do I invest to expand in international markets or do I go buy, the toy?
Yeah, we needed to expand. It wasn't a conscious effort. So, well, if we're going to be acquired one day, we weren't really thinking about that. We just wanted to grow the company, and the people who work for us wanted to be part of that business. So, because we were in North America, I was in the States, my partner was in Canada, and our main office was in Canada. I was on the road a lot trying to get this business. So we kept to the same time zone, which is basically Latin America. So went into Latin America initially, Mexico and Latin America. And we started to get some traction there. And after that sort of gained ground, there was also the Caribbean. And we thought, well, you know what? Europe, because I'm from Europe, of course, let's look at that area. And that worked out all right. And then Asia was a whole different thing, totally unfriendly time zone because it's 12 to 14 hours adrift of ours. So I moved over there. I moved to Singapore and for 2 years to build up our business in the APAC region, to sign up business partners and to sell our product. So I lived in Singapore, which was a fantastic experience, by the way. And I love that culture. Well, that put us with a foothold in that, from India in the west through to Australia, the old APAC region. So we did quite well out of that. Even branched out into some of the South Pacific Islands, which was a cool place to go to, by the way. But I enjoyed the travel. So basically, I was traveling a lot for business. I was out of my home country, United States, for many months of the year, traveling. But one thing I did, it's very important. If anybody is listening to my story and think international business sounds too complicated, just do your homework. Because what I did before I went off to these foreign lands thinking, I have a great product, everyone will want to buy it. No, they won't. I learned, wherever I went, it was Latin America or was Asia or even Europe, I learned a little bit about the country's history and their culture and the way they do business. Really important. And if I went over to meet them and they said, Malcolm, we're going to take you to one of our favorite bars tonight, one of our favorite restaurants, and come along. Yeah, do it. You do that stuff because a lot of these countries in the world will not do business with you unless they trust you and they almost become your friend, especially when you're providing the sales and technical support to them when they're selling your product. So it became a team effort basically all over. And it had to happen that way. All right. Maybe a little bit different now, because everything could be done either via the cloud or whatever. We landed up also having offices, apart from the States. We had one in the UK and also one in Australia to serve those markets. So that's the way we did it, really. But learn a bit about the country you're going to, get yourself in the international markets. Probably there's a lot more than business you think than in some of these places in the world. And, just because we may not be doing well here in North America, some other places in the world they're doing very well, thank you very much. And there's money to be made elsewhere in the world. So that was pretty much it. And then, of course, based on our installed base, our intellectual property, we became a target for acquisition, I guess.
So you talked about doing your homework in terms of preparation for expanding to international markets, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people who, may have a product and thinking about that, trying to determine if the time is right or where to start? Kind of how did you get going on this international journey?
It was there was a lot of flying by the seat of our pants, I must admit. Now, one of the first places in Latin America I went to was Buenos Aires, Argentina. So I'm Brit, going to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and we still had the Falklands War in our brain cells. Are they going to bring that up? And then while I was there, an economic sort of downturn happened, like very quickly, and there was riots starting in the streets. Oh my God, how? You learn the lesson. So I needed to do look a bit of better preparation after that and find out, is this really an affluent country? Are they doing well technology-wise? Are they up with the rest of the Western world? And typically most of them are, and like Chile was a great place to go to, and in Latin America as well, in Central America. So, you learn a bit. So do your research. I wasn't worried about safety at the time. I should have been. I went to Colombia 3 times, but I find that was fabulous. Then when I was in a taxi, I thought, don't business people get kidnapped in taxis in this country? Oh, yeah, they do. But I was already in a taxi when I felt that. But if it doesn't matter. It's the quest to do business in foreign lands, the best quest to do business anywhere prevails at the end of the day. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to be successful. So, yeah, my information is more freely available now than when we were growing our business, I must admit. So with the information that we had available at the time, we did our homework to find out, what's the country like? Is the city sort of affluent, and are they doing well, the capital cities? And to be honest with you, there wasn't really, we made a few mistakes, went to some countries that weren't really up to speed, or I did, and it was very difficult, dealing with a totally different business culture that we weren't familiar with. And that presented challenges along the way. And that probably didn't turn out as good, but we got some business, but not a lot. So all the world is not made equal. If it was, then, life would be simpler, wouldn't it? But it's not. So.
As you're traveling and doing business internationally, how did you cope with language barriers? Was that, just translator, easy solution? Were you learning some of the language along the way? Kind of, how did that piece go for you?
Well, I speak. People ask me how many languages I speak. I said 5: English, American, Canadian, Australian, and South African. Oh, okay, but that's all right. No, we're fortunate, speaking the language we do, that it's accepted worldwide. It's a world language, and there are sometimes barriers where I could be in a business meeting, or have been, and the people I'm in the business meeting with, they'll talk to them between themselves during the meeting, and it's easy to think, are they talking about me? Are they saying something nice? You don't need to worry about that. It just happens. That's the way they communicate, and they'll typically speak English, and we can get through a conversation fluently enough that we can get along, and we'll get the point over, and all of that. Yes, I've been to countries where it's been more challenging. China, for example, was difficult, but it works. You have translators there, or they would bring in a translator to speak English. But you know, to be honest with you, I didn't even worry about that at the time. I didn't, because it was everyone speaks English, let's just go for it. And I tried to, with all due respect, I did try and learn. I went to Bullitt's school to learn the Spanish language, and that was just a miserable experience. So I thought, yeah, can't do that. So that's it. I relied on other people, basically.
Adapted. Yeah. Interesting. So as you fast forward now and you've gotten to, obviously you traveled a lot as you were setting up the business. It sounds like that became a huge interest for you. And, you know, post exit now travel is a big part of your life and, you know, who you are. You know, was there obviously a lot of this, you and your business partner, clearly very bright people, had a structured plan, right? Test and learn and found the common sense answers along the way, and clearly experienced great success. As you were looking forward to, you know, obviously as bigger companies have that interest and there's a potential exit that's coming, right? Was there any thought into kind of setting yourself up for that next phase and, you know, being able to travel, and kind of how did you look at that?
Well, we weren't actively looking for it, but we knew there was interest. And when it came, the time came, we went through a 6-month due diligence period, which we expected. And that's, you know, obviously, and we were going to be purchased at one other time, but we had a lawsuit slapped against us for whatever reason that went away eventually. So it was tough, but we was just business as usual for us, you know, like, you know, they had to do what they had to do. So we prepped for it. But one of the things that I didn't foresee, when that day came, I wouldn't be working. I've worked all my life ever since I was like 17, 18 to, you know, donkey's years later on. And I never really thought I'd just rest, but I got bored. And that's the key. After 6 months, I was bored stupid. I had to do something. But something, maybe I travel on business, but one thing I didn't do was travel to some of the more off the beaten path or obscure place on the planet, which is full of adventure. And that's really what I wanted to do. Sometimes if I went to a place, then I stay over a couple of days extra or go a couple of days early so I could enjoy more. But I'm talking about going out in the boonies, out in the middle of nowhere, and seeing how the rest of the world lives. And that's what I focused on, and that's what I've been doing whenever I could do it over the last several years. You know. So,
what's the most exotic place you've been to, or the most out there, off the grid, remote, you know, people wouldn't necessarily think of, but you had a great experience?
I went, it's probably a couple. I did trek the Himalayas mountains. I went to Nepal and then stayed in Kathmandu, my most chaotic place on the planet. I stayed in the city, then went up in the mountains, and I went by myself. Obviously, I had to get a trekking guide with me, or else no one would have seen me ever again. But I did that. I went to the country of Bhutan, climbed to the Tiger's Nest Monastery, which is on a rock face. And then I went to, a few years ago, Mongolian wilderness, and camped out in the Mongolian wilderness, which was a fantastic experience. The scenery is drop dead gorgeous, and that's something. But I go, because I'm a scuba diver, my quest was to go to the most obscure and the most revered dive sites in the world. And I was supposed to go to one next month, actually, in Indonesia, but they've closed down. Indonesia won't let in any foreigners at all. But these are huge marine parks where the country takes pride in their area, their marine parks and national parks, in so much these are still places of beauty in the world. And I like going to places like that, even today.
Very cool. What's the most exciting thing or interesting thing that either you're working on or looking forward to?
Well, people use the term bucket list, overused term, in my estimation. Yeah, I do have a list of things I want to do, but unfortunately it's getting bigger rather than shorter, which is not the right thing, you know? And so that will be a never ending list. But I also found something else that I enjoy I did this back in June this year. I did it for a few years anyway, but everything closed down last year. But it was back doing it in June. I do speaking engagements on cruise ships, right? So that's interesting. And people, I used to do a lot of presentations at trade shows in different places, talking about technology. And an agency got hold of me and said, "Hey, Malcolm, you ever done speaking on cruise ships, enrichment talks on cruise ships?" I said, "I've never been on a cruise ship, So they said, "Try it out." So I got invited back in 2014 or 2015. One of the cruise companies invited me on to do some enrichment talks. So I thought, okay, I'll do it. And I've really been doing it ever since. And then one of the major cruise lines set sail again in June out of St. Martin and did a 2-week cruise around the Caribbean. And they invited me on board to do some enrichment talks, which is great. You just stand up and talk to us about passengers, about stuff, mainly history and geography of foreign lands and culture, foreign culture, which over the years of traveling for business, I got to learn quite a bit about, and the way people treat us as Americans or Brits. And so that's what I do now. And yeah, I enjoy it. Too many people, mind you, but it's all right.
I was going to say, would you go on a cruise if you did not have a speaking engagement booked?
Probably not. My wife would like to, but I would find that, there's people live on cruise ships. You've probably heard that, they retire, they're going to live on a cruise ship. They sail around the world and they get up when they feel like it. They're weighted on hand and foot. They're not balcony, got no work to do. And it's probably a half decent way of life. And they've got healthcare when they need it on board the ship. And it's probably a good thing. I don't know. The last cruise ship I was on in the Caribbean, I was speaking with another gentleman on board. He was a science doctor who was talking about space, and he was doing more of that. I was just talking about the area we were in, and he goes on world cruises all the time and really likes it. And I don't think that I could do that. It's too confined. But the beauty about this ship is only 20% capacity because they're just testing waters, so to speak. But I remember doing a transatlantic one on one of the larger cruise ships. It might have been Norwegian. There was 5,000 passengers on board. It's like a floating apartment complex of going across the Atlantic. Brutal.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I had to do talks every day at SIVs. I had 10 altogether as we sailed across. Interesting, but I can never do that again.
Shorter hops only. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the conversation today, Malcolm. What's the best way for our listeners to be able to connect back with you?
My website, if you want to post it, Liam, it's malcolmteasdale.com, malcomjteasdale.com. And pretty much everything about me there is I've got, you've seen it. So you've seen pictures, opinions. I've got a podcast I do periodically when I got time called The Travel Addict, which I talk about travel stuff. And I've got books. I've written 5 books about business and adventure travel. So basically everything you need to know about me is there. And there's links to Twitter. I'm Malcolm the Brit on Twitter. And what else? I'm on LinkedIn. So the usual suspects.
Very cool. Well, appreciate your time again, Malcolm, and look forward to staying in touch.
All right. Thanks, Liam. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.